Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development and another episode of Sales and Cigars. Today my guest is Dr. John Frank, first medical doctor we've had on the podcast. Also the first Super Bowl champ on the podcast. So John is a physician, a doctor who specializes in hair replacement. And he wrote a book similar to the style of book that I wrote, The 7 Critical Mistakes CEOs Make. His is about hair replacement, and it's called The 2-Minute Warning. And he wrote it to really help guys who are getting bad information, that are making bad decisions. And we talk a little bit about sales, and he recognizes how he's an entrepreneur and a salesperson. And our job as salespeople is to really qualify and make sure that we can provide value and help to that individual. In his case, a patient. In most of our cases, it's a customer and a prospect that we want to provide value to. So, we don't talk a lot about football, and he doesn't have a lot of stories in the book. But Joe Montana wrote the foreword for him. He's a Buckeye. He was a super smart academic All-American, All-American at starter 3 years, still holds a couple of tight end records at Ohio State. But we really focus on the entrepreneurial journey and family. So I go grab a cigar, go grab a cocktail, and strap in for another fun episode of Sales and Cigars. Thanks. So, Dr. Frank, I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule. I know you gotta go coach some baseball, so we're gonna get right into it. I appreciate you taking the time to jump on.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Walter. I'm so excited.
It's gonna be fun. I think we got a little when Mike set us up to do this. The book I wrote a shook myself, so that's gonna be fun. The college rivalry thing is gonna be kind of fun to
Yeah.
talk through, and we'll have because you guys ruined my senior year with that win at the last game. Bruce is your old
Yeah.
coach.
Yeah.
Um,
I think I was gone
so
by then, but that was
you, yeah, you had won a couple of Super Bowls
something
by
like
then,
that.
but
Yeah. First.
still ruined my senior
Yeah.
year. Thank you. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the journey. You've got an interesting story, but I kind of want to put it in the perspective of our audience is a lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs, and how you went from football to being a doctor, the why behind that, and then why we put a book together. Kind of just tell that story a little bit to how we got to where we are today.
I I was always since I was a child interested in being a doctor. It's funny, we had a in our neighborhood when I was in elementary school. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and we would carpool to school, and one of the families, he was a doctor and an internist, and he was just a cool guy. I think I may have been in second or third, and you'd sit in the carpool and you'd talk to your friends, and they'd say, "Hey, what does your dad do? And what do you want to be when you grow up?" But this guy, Fred Turkle, Dr. Turkle, he was just a great guy, and I heard people bemoaning, not bemoaning, but you would hear kids and their parents saying, "Well, well, I have a tough boss, or I have to be somewhere because my boss needs me to do this, that, and the other thing." But this doctor, it seemed like he was his own boss. And from the time I was a young age, I thought to myself, I don't really want to have a boss. I mean, that was before I knew I was going to get married, of course, Walter, but that's for another day. Um, I didn't want to have a boss, and I was good in science. And then there were some things that happened around me, and extended family and things, some surgeries. And these doctors, they turned into be great role models. Little did I
Hmm.
know, as I got through medical school and residency and fellowship and practice, that medicine today unfortunately, is not what it used to be when I was a child, and it's a very difficult system. It's a great career. You get, there's this wholesome opportunity to really just help people, And I don't want to go too far off topic, the whole dynamics of medicine and things like that. But for me, it was just that's really what got me interested. I was good in science, and seemed like a good career. So I'm still in medicine, but it's really plastic surgery. I don't.
So the hair replacement falls into the plastic surgery bucket
Yeah.
of medicine.
I call it plastic surgery. I'm trained in ears, nose, and throat. I'm board certified by the American Board of Otolaryngology, and I have advanced fellowship training in head and neck, in skull-based surgery and facial plastic surgery. It gets more, the more years you put in, the more complicated it seems, but a lot of experience.
especially in that especially in that
Yeah,
area. That head is kind of gets very specific.
yeah, it does get very specific. And I used to do all types of facial plastic surgery, facelifts and rhinoplasty, nose jobs and stuff like that. And part of that was doing hair restoration. I had a mentor in Chicago, Ray Conier, who was still a great surgeon, a great friend, and a great mentor. And he was just happiest when he was doing hair. It's like, John, you should really.
Hmm.
It almost is like a red-headed stepchild, hair restoration. Sometimes people don't take it they take it a lot more serious today than they did when I started over 20 years ago. Um, so I thought it was not really to be taken so seriously. I was formally trained, but Ray would say, John, this hair, you should really pay attention. This is such a great field. This is like my favorite thing to do. So I did
Hmm.
that.
So I mean, hair is one of the from a what a man notices about a woman. It's like the first thing. We may not consciously say it, but it's like one of the first things we notice about a woman is hair. One of the reasons why Muslims have women cover their hair because of that, for that reason, and why we cover our heads when we go into shul or some churches. So, but what I find interesting about your story is that as a youngster to second or third grade, you thought the doctor guy was cool and it had a great way to interacting with people, and he had ability to run
Yeah,
his own
yeah,
life. It was more
yeah,
entrepreneurial, I think, back then, and a lot less bullshit that you guys have to
yeah.
deal with today. My wife is in
Yeah, okay.
healthcare, and like I don't understand why anybody would like open up a healthcare company and put hospitals together, because it's so difficult to make money, and not even make money, it's just break even sometimes, right? To and provide a quality service, right? So the system to me is like the system is sort of like our political system. It's broken, but it's better than anything else that's out there. So we kind of muddle along.
It's I boy, it's really it's a challenge. I have health. Thank God I'm healthy today. But we have our things. My wife and my three kids, and we go to doctors and dentists, and it's really a little bit frightening, the system. And look, I'm not here to bemoan the system because I'm all about trying to make things better. And let me tell you, Walter, if one day, because what I'm doing as a plastic surgeon, a hair restoration surgeon, can if I can develop some things to help improve the life of my colleagues, the guys and the gals that went through medical school and residency, that are still very much beleaguered by the system. I'd love to help make their worlds better. But the thing is,
Hmm.
there's like this dream of it can be very captivating. If you're a young person and you go to a doctor, I went to a doctor when I was in maybe fifth or I don't know, same when I was a kid. I had back pain, low back pain,
Hmm.
and my father and I was complaining, and usually all I heard was, suck it up. But finally, my parents said, "Okay, we're going to take you to a spine doctor." So we went to see a spine doctor in Pittsburgh, and he just left a big impact on me. He was great. He took X-rays. He sat down with me. He listened. He was gentle. Turns out I was born with an extra vertebra, an extra bone in my lumbar spine down by the small of my back. And this was before I was really that deep into football. I've had back pain my whole life, but I've learned how to function and use physical therapy. I've never had surgery, but
Hmm.
he left a big impact on me. So it is captivating to be a doctor because you can really
No,
change lives.
it,
But it's challenging. It's the system, as you mentioned, it's broken. It's broken.
yeah, it is what it is, and if we can, in our own little way, have an impact on a system or people, most importantly, and maybe some colleagues, and then we've created a legacy um, for ourselves and benefit for our community. Um, and I think from an entrepreneurial perspective, we all face that. That those are we have our own sets of challenges, no matter what role that we're in or what market segment we're in, healthcare or manufacturing or distribution. There's still some. We don't have some of the restraints that are there um, in medicine, and banking has regulations, and it's just. But like I said, it's better than some of the alternatives out there,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, yeah,
So to get to medical school from football, not it's not a normal path. Not most, except for one of the guys that we were talking about
yeah,
before we started
yeah.
recording. I went to Michigan. You went to Ohio State. Stephon Humphreys was one of those football players that was just super smart, pretty close to a 4.0 average at Michigan, and then went on to graduate school. And that's not a normal thing. So can we talk a little bit about how you stay motivated? Because you're an academic All-American as well as an All-American
Yeah.
football, and incredibly hard to do. Like, what did you have to give up to do that?
I don't even know what I had to give up, Walter. I just was. I mean, even in high school, we had the circle of friends and my family and everything. I mean, academics. I remember when I had my first report card maybe ninth grade in high school. I had straight A's and brought the report card home to get signed, of course, duh. And I think my father put it in a frame and put it on the kid hung it in a frame. And my cousin had done my uncle had done the same thing for his cousin. It was just very much a part of our culture to do well in school. And I wasn't gifted in really anything academically, to be honest with you. I was pretty good at math. I could figure that stuff out, but I was a terrible reader and always was restless and was one of these kids that was more into for the playground and things like that. But I just worked hard and I wasn't. We had a big high school. We had 700 and some kids in our class, so I wasn't in the top
Oh,
1 or 2 percentile, but I was in the top 10th percentile. But there were other athletes, like our valedictorian was a fantastic baseball pitcher and had pitched in college at the University of Pennsylvania. And my best friend was his parents were professors at a small school in Pittsburgh, and these are guys who are all smarter than me. And so I just hung on their coattails and worked very hard. And I gave a lot of stuff up, but I never I made the parties. I had a lot of fun too, believe me, and I really had a good time. Still do,
well, that's
still
good to
do.
hear. That's good to hear. I think, to me, hard work, discipline, I mean, those are the things that get you over the hump no matter what you're doing, whether it's on a football practice field or football field or tennis court or classroom, is having that discipline to do what you need to do every day. I think that's once you control that, that allows you to develop the habits. But if you don't have the discipline to do what it takes, and there's got to be balance. Anybody that's a zealot about anything is going to burn out or kind of just go off on the edges. I think having some balance of being able to hit a couple of parties and do all that socially is important because then you're just not well rounded.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about discipline, and I agree. You've got to have a sense of discipline, and I've learned recently that discipline is all about anticipation. But if you're so like wound up in yourself and what needs to be done and your goals and squeezing so hard, you're going to drive yourself crazy and you're going to develop some terrible habits. And
I hear you.
when I was younger, I wasn't perfect, and I'm still not. But balancing between really being an entrepreneur as a hair transplant surgeon and building with practices in a couple different cities. Um, you've got to be balanced, and I'm between balancing that and family. Family is like the greatest joy. On one hand, it's the greatest joy, the sense of nostalgia you get from your children and things. But on the other hand, it could be the most work and most sense of frustration too, and the same thing in marriage. And so, I mean, I put those at the highest priority, and people struggle. We struggle, but
Yeah,
these are the most important things.
they are, and having the the discipline to do what you need to do, knowing what you need to do, and the opportunity to forgive yourself when you have a misstep and pick yourself back up and keep going, and having the support system. I know my wife, she doesn't really listen to this program, so I'll be very generous. I mean, she's very forgiving of a lot of stupid shit that I do, and gives me a lot of license to try things. Because I believe my attitude is if I'm not living on the edge, I'm taking up too much
Wow.
space.
Yeah.
And she's one of those people
Yeah.
who, like, really? You want to
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah.
That seems risky.
Yeah.
So there's balance in the
Yeah.
relationship. Sometimes there's a tug of
Yeah.
war, um, but that's how you got to work through it and figure it out. But it's cool that when you're, I have a daughter she'll be 21 in April, and she's a junior in university, and it's fun just to see how she has grown and takes responsibility for decisions and things that she says about, like the university, the professors, the institution. Like it seems like they don't really care about us. They're just like they're making things very difficult. And I'm like, welcome to the world. That's how it's going to be for the next 50, 60 years, right? They care, but they don't care. Especially because she was a COVID kid, right? That
Yeah.
her graduation from high school was a drive-through, and her first year at Kentucky was a COVID-filled, um, Zoom-filled kind of a situation. So, but as you say, family is watching them grow up, and it's like we tee them up as best we can. We give them the right values and the ideas and the traditions,
Yeah.
and then let them go off to college and make
I'm
decisions.
I'm
And
I'm glad that
it's
you get to see your daughter make progress in whatever that is, in responsibility or maturity, and that's fun. That's really fun. But yeah, I mean, they disrupted. We've been disrupted for a short while here, and so
So let's talk. I want to talk about the book, but there's one thing. You went from Pittsburgh high school, grew up in Pittsburgh. Was there a family connection to Ohio State before you went there, or was
no,
it just a recruiting thing?
it was recruiting. I'll tell you, U of M was really tops on my list, and I had a good enough senior year and had some notoriety and media attention that I really could have gone anywhere. Um, I I had the Ivy League. Yale was beating down my door, and University of Pennsylvania, but they weren't giving out any athletic scholarships, and I didn't want to burden my family with that extra debt. So Michigan was on in the radar, and Ohio State and things, and it was just a good fit. I saw an opportunity to to play quickly at Ohio State. I didn't think they had a lot of talent at tight end, and for me,
Hmm,
that was
okay.
a decision, amongst other things. I met amazing
Sure.
people at Ohio State, their medical center, and um, I could list people that have helped me along the way that are 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 you know
But it's a complicated decision as a kid that you have to think about playing and learning, but you're also put in the situation where you got to think about 4 or 5 years, 20 years down the road. Like, what am I going to get out of this, right?
yeah.
Besides the education, and your family was able to help provide some context, I would
Yeah, they
imagine,
did.
for you.
They did, and they really helped me keep in perspective. I had an interesting childhood, and I allude to a little bit in the book because I found it good reading. But the, at the end of the day, they did keep in perspective that um, you know a life as an athlete is temporary. There's really not longevity with that. And I
Hmm.
never saw now coach. You talk about our kids and your daughter and growth, and I'm coaching my son in baseball, and I just, I guess maybe I wish I would have looked at coaching a little more closely because that is very rewarding, and you get
It's
a
a tough job, though, isn't it?
it just never really, I never considered it. So my family kept in perspective that being an actual athlete did not have longevity. So that just reinforced that I really needed to work hard to get into a career, what I was considering a real career. Uh,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
yeah,
So let's talk about the book. I believe that most people that have some sort of story to tell and they have a book in them, right? How interesting it is it can varies. But what, besides Capuzzi, what prompted you to write a book? What was like? Who'd you write it for? What do you want somebody to get out of it?
um, well, besides Mike Capuzzi, who's just a beast, greatest, um, Hall of Fame guy. Hair restoration is on the surface seems very simple, and but if you plumb the depths of it, there's a lot going on there, and I just had a hard time explaining myself, explaining the nuances and all of the details about not just the technical parts of it, Walter, the emotional and the psychological and the benefits and the risks involved too. So
Risk.
the risk to appear. Not everybody benefits, and that's a difficult thing to explain.
Okay.
I'm in,
Yeah,
I'm here with vulnerable.
I'm curious. I'm curious about. I want to go back. I want to get back into the book, but I'm curious as to what one of those risks would be. I mean, let's take financial aside from it. Like, why would somebody not benefit from having more hair than they did before?
Well, let's put it this way: hair restoration now is very much a big business, a commoditized industry, and everybody thinks that they can do it, and a lot of people try. And technically, it's really not that difficult. But having a sense of what someone's going to look like after a transplant and after they've had a transplant and lose more hair because it is an ongoing perpetual problem men have ongoing hair loss. And so if the hair is not placed correctly, if not enough is placed, if too much is placed, it can be damaging. At worst, at it even, I mean, it if you lose more hair and it doesn't look better, where's the value?
Right.
And so there are many times, and I've got testimonials and people that real life stories that are life changing, turn people around professionally, socially, intimately, amazing. But when I was younger, I would take everybody, and that's the problem with the field is so big now that if if you're recommending as a doctor or as a salesperson in a doctor's office, because that's really what they are, and the field has tried to masquerade that they're not salespeople, but and I love sales. I think the world can be built on in many ways can be built on sales, but for this there you really can't work on every vulnerable young man that comes in your door sheepish and afraid and has a pocket full of money. That's not a reason to do these procedures. It needs to be well thought out and well disclosed. And I turn away a lot of people, Walter. I don't operate on everybody. There are medicines and
But
vitamins and alternatives and things like that are important aspect of this.
to me, you know, I'm going to relate what you do to sales, right? You kind of talked a little bit about it, but to me, sales is helping people,
100%,
right? If
100%.
and if we don't help them, we're not doing our job. It adds to the terrible stereotype that salespeople have. But one of the ways that salespeople should be helping people is to ruthlessly disqualify people that show up, right? That are I mean, if I talk to 10 people and five of them let's do something, I guarantee you, I mean, I know it's true because I know the numbers. Two of the five are not a fit because they don't fit what I think I can do. I don't think I can help them. I don't believe they have the commitment to do whatever the reason is. And if I bring them in to whether it's hair replacement or business development, and I fail, then I've done a disservice to their whole team and their community and their company and myself. And I would rather say I'm not a fit and give them let them walk away feeling good, but give them alternatives. But to me, that's part of what we have to do as sales. And salespeople get themselves in trouble by not disqualifying people early and often.
There's not enough of that, especially in my field. It's not like buying a car or a new designer suit or a watch or a home or whatever, signing on the dotted line for an apartment. It feels really badly when you're aging and you're losing your hair, and it to the core it disrupts people. And a lot of my clients they've got the world in the palm of their hand. They're successful. They've got everything. They're not 19. They're not trying to figure out who they are, what they're going to do, what the next step is, et cetera, et cetera. They're established guys. Like they've been through it, and the only thing that's bothering them is their hair. And so they're vulnerable. They need good advice. They need good direction. And so what's rampant in my industry here is this thing called free consultations. And that's just a bad idea, because if it's free, then they're the ones that are the product. And we've gotten away. I'll admit, earlier in my career, it was a gap in my training. I was giving away free consultations, and guess what? I was biased. I wanted to get everybody in the door, and so we don't charge a lot of money for our consultations, but it's just something to level the playing field and keep everybody honest. And I wish more people in the field charged. We don't make money on it's inexpensive, but it's just a way.
It's a commitment. It shows a commitment of the patient.
Absolutely.
And and then you have a sense of responsibility because somebody stroked a check for whatever it is.
Got it.
But you still have a responsibility to deliver good news, bad news, or the truth
Exactly.
at the end of the day.
Exactly. That's exactly why we do it, and it worked, and it's worked out great. Haven't done it for my entire career, but just in the last recent months, and it's the way to go. It's the way to go.
Well, I think it's the ethical thing that we all need to do in sales in one way or the other. So the book itself, it, I'll explain the shook concept. You correct me, but it's a short, helpful book
Yeah.
targeted to explain how somebody thinks. Yeah, put that up there a little. Yeah, there you go. So we want to make sure that people can see that. It's got John on the cover. 2-minute warning, which is a reference to the football
Right.
career. No Buckeye stuff. That's good. So I think so. Who do you want to read that? Somebody that's thinking about it. Somebody that's worried about it. Who do you want to read the book?
Anybody who has questions about well, it's for men over the age of 35 that have figured things out. If you're 26 and you're about to purchase a Eurail pass and you've got, three different girls you're seeing or you're whatever, and you haven't figured it out, it's kind of early, and maybe you're afraid that maybe you have a medical condition or you're whatever. This is for guys over the age of 35, established, know who they are, and hair's the only thing that's bothering them, and they just haven't been able to get the right advice. Um, because there are plenty of blunders and mistakes, even from dermatologists these days. They're giving maybe recommending some products which don't work. Other things do work. There's dozens of things on the market. So I help people figure out what is helpful. And if during that conversation a hair transplant is something that is going to be valuable for them, then we'll go down that pathway. So if you've got some hair loss, or if you've seen images of yourself, maybe you've been at a wedding and you see a picture of your crown and the hair's gone, or your wife or your girlfriend or your kids say something, or you've just seen it thinning out over years and you want answers, then the book has some very, very key pearls of wisdom in there, I think. And so that's really where it's most helpful. It's not really a football book. The foreword is by Joe Montana, the great
Hi,
Joe
Joe.
Montana. He did a nice foreword, but this book is not. It has some football stories in there about my days in the Super Bowl and other things that are kind of fun, but 90% of what's in here is how to deal with hair loss, who to turn to, and really how to stay out of hot water and to not get into trouble. That's
Hmm.
probably the biggest thing, Walter, is to, if you read the book, you're not going to find yourself squirming and maybe making the wrong decisions or even spending money in the wrong place.
Yeah, and I think an informational. You're giving people an outlet to find information without having to go talk to somebody, but to kind of get a lay of the land. And then if they're not in one of the areas where you're easily accessible to you, they at least have some guidelines, so maybe some ways to think about what it is that they need to do next and what kind of conversations they should have to before they go just sign up with somebody with a free consultation and start moving hair around on their
That's
body.
right.
And I'm not minimizing it, but that I think information is key, especially when it's something so personal. And I was thinking,
That's right.
I was talking to somebody today, and I would think Zoom calls have helped create a little uptick in men's noticing that their hair is thinning, right? I have a barber who's a friend who, gives me updates every 3 weeks when he cuts my hair. But for me, when I put my head down and I kind of like have my head's down and facing the camera and I look into the screen, it's like, oh, wow, that's not quite as thick as it used to be, right? The pictures tell a story, but when you look in there and you see more scalp than you used to, that's I don't know, it's a little disturbing. And I'm not at a point where I'm gonna do something, but it is a thing that's really personal. It kind of it's maybe more so with guys than gals. I don't know, but that was like really bothering me the first time I saw that during COVID when I was doing a lot more Zooms. It was
Yeah, you're not alone.
weird.
You're not alone. It has revealed many, many more people because of what they see on camera, and it is quite personal. So, so for that reason, it just reinforces the fact that what we do, our service, it's not a commodity. This is not. This
It's
is
not.
not. It's really something much more deep and personal, and so that's why we wrote the book. And there's look, a quick book. It's a quick read. It's an hour and a half, and it's impossible to cover everything I've been doing for almost 25 years of my career. But I really pulled out several key things that are very informative, and at least if after you get those, if you read the book and those were interesting, then it can instruct you in how to contact me, and in a 45-minute conversation, a Zoom consultation, which is how we like to do it. If you want to come in person, we can make those arrangements. But the Zoom, we can you can learn a lot. You will learn a lot. There's no question about it. And that's probably the most helpful thing. So it's a little bit of a pathway, but it's a valuable pathway because there's value all along the way. And I've been doing it a long
Well,
time. Yeah.
I think that a short book, I mean, this is what I took away from Mike Capuzzi, that you want to hit the points hard. You want to be really clear about the things that are important. The brevity of the book forces you to stay on target, but you can be really impactful. Because I wrote a similar style book about a completely different topic, and the feedback I've gotten is you cut right to the chase, identified an issue, explained it, and then explained why and how to fix it. And now, whether they can go do it or not, but now they're informed. And they also understand how you and I think after we read the book. So they heard you say things today on the podcast that, not everybody's a fit. There's risks involved. It does work when it's done well, but you need to be informed. And the book is the first step in that informative process, and then a Zoom call, and then you go where it goes, right? You can't really map out the whole road, but I think that's a really valuable, and I'm glad that Mike got you to do this, because it's going to help. You're going to help. I think 2 or 3 years down the road, you're going to realize like how many people you've helped just because of that book. It's a really cool thing. So let me ask this question: past or present, does John have a relationship with cigars?
Past, past, definitely. I never understood. I thought it was so curious how Cuba developed this brand to be the it cigars. But I've had some in the past. I've had some great cigars, and especially in New York, there are a couple different places, cigar bars. Kind of men's clubs to go and sit down and connect with people. One of my former teammates from the 49ers, a linebacker, Ricky Ellison, who's involved with the missile defense advocacy he started. He lives in Washington, D.C. He'd come to New York and take the train up, and we'd head over to the Carnegie Room, I think, on like 56, and
Okay.
sit in there and have a couple stogies. And I'll never forget one time I was invited to play golf in Chicago when I was in my residency. I forget the name of this club. It was a private, exclusive club, and sure enough, there was none other. It was a rain delay, so we're all in the clubhouse, and I look over and there's Michael Jordan, and I'm like, I'm at Michael Jordan's club right now, and he had a cigar, and you know, people can be weird about the things you remember, and I'll just never forget the way he was like cutting that cigar and dragging on that thing, and we all sat around and had cigars, and so anymore it's like in a professional setting like today, it's hard for me to have a cigar, but I look forward to the time when my 14-year-old gets to the point where he and I can sit down and reminisce and have a cigar
Yeah.
together.
It's to me, they're a very social thing,
Very much so.
right? In the right
Very
environment
much
where
so.
you can, because when I travel, I'll go to the local cigar shop, and I don't care where it is, little tiny podunk town in Missouri or Pennsylvania, or a big shop in Orlando, um, and no matter who's sitting there and what their demographic is, I've got something in common immediately, because we both have a stick in our hand, and we can have a conversation, right? Because we got common ground,
Yeah,
and
that's it.
it's also for me a contemplative
Yeah.
thing. I can go like I'm talking to you from my own little cigar lounge, which has become my
Yeah.
office,
Very nice.
um, and I can just sit down with a notebook and a cigar and write and think and be creative. So, um, yeah, I appreciate that, and I could just imagine. I've seen video where he was Jordan was being interviewed, and how he's always serious about everything,
Yeah.
disciplined, but his the the way he handled the cigar it kind of stood out. It was one of the things I noticed, and that he was interviewed by Shankman from the Cigar Aficionado guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, um, so let's wrap up with, because I know you got to get to go coach your son. Um, where do people? I'm going to have the website and your website on in the notes for
Great.
the podcast. Amazon, they just go look up the book in
Actually,
Amazon. What's the best way to
I'm not
get it?
sure we're going to release it on Amazon just yet. You really need to contact us, and you can, if you have that information, or you could just Google me, John Frank Hair. If you put in if you put in John Frank Hair, I'm sure you'll find me on the first page or so, or football hair, because I'm known for that. Um,
I mean, johnfrankmd.com is also where they can
yeah,
go,
you can go
right?
to johnfrankmd.com. Yeah,
All right. And I'll double check with Capuzzi to see if there's a little funnel or something he's got set up to grab the book, but
we're working on it.
make sure we
We're
do this
working
right.
on it.
All right, man. Um, go be a good coach and a dad. Appreciate the time. Keep doing the good work, and go
You're
blue.
doing a really nice job. I appreciate it. And I just now I recognize that football helmet in the background there. Uh,
Hmm.
it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's in my blood. I'm not a fan of what it's become, but I'm an alum. Once you're a Michigan guy, you're a Michigan guy. Once you're an Ohio State guy, you're an Ohio State guy, right?
Now I'm not
It's
I'm
there.
not a big fan of what it's become either. So offline or over a cigar, let's
Next
talk
time
about
I'm in New
that.
York, we'll go have a cigar.
Deal.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
man.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.